Your home is your sanctuary. It's the one place on earth where you're supposed to feel completely safe. It's your corner of the world. But what happens when that feeling of safety is just an illusion? What happens when the monsters aren't hiding under your bed, but are actively trying to break down your door? Tonight, I have two true stories for you. The first is about a family whose entire sense of security was shattered when two men decided to come inside. The second is about two siblings who discover that the most terrifying thing in the world is a single, unexplained hand pressing against the window of their most private space. These aren't just stories. They're reminders of how thin that veil of safety really is, and how quickly it can be torn away. Story 1: The night it all happened was so normal it's almost insulting to think about. I remember it with a clarity that feels like a betrayal. It was a Tuesday in late autumn, the kind of evening where the sky gets dark way too early and a chill has already settled deep into the bones of the world. Inside our two-story house, though, it was warm. My name is Alex, and I was 17. My mom was in the kitchen, humming along to some classic rock station while the smell of baked chicken filled the air. My dad was in the living room, feet up, watching a sports recap show. The low drone of the commentators was the background noise of my life. I was upstairs in my room, supposed to be doing homework, but mostly just scrolling through my phone, lost in pointless teenage drama. Our house was our castle, a place for slammed doors during arguments and for movie nights cuddled up on the sofa. It was boringly, beautifully safe. I never, not for a single second, had a reason to question that. The first sound was so out of place that my brain didn't even register it as a threat. It was a loud bang from downstairs, followed by what sounded like a muffled shout. Annoyed, I pulled my headphones off. I just figured my dad had knocked something over. Then I heard it again, but sharper this time. A crack, followed by a grunt of pain that was undeniably human. That sound sliced through the peaceful evening like a shard of glass. I crept out of my room to the top of the stairs. From there, I could see straight down to the front door. What I saw has been burned into my mind, a permanent scar. The front door was wide open, spilling cold night air into our warm home. Framed in the doorway were two men in dark hoodies, their faces hidden by shadows. And they were on my father. One man had him in a headlock. I saw a flicker of blue light near my dad's neck. And then a horrifying shudder ran through his whole body. A taser. My father, a man I'd always seen as invincible, just collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. The other man started kicking him. Not just once, but over and over with a sickening, vicious rhythm. I was frozen. It felt like watching a movie, something violent and unreal that couldn't possibly be happening in my own hallway. Then my mom screamed. She ran in from the kitchen, holding a heavy wooden rolling pin like a baseball bat. She was a whirlwind of pure maternal fury. And for a second I thought she might actually drive them back. But she was small. One of them turned, grabbed the rolling pin from her with disgusting ease, and hit her across the side of the head. She went down, a crumpled heap on the floor next to my dad. That's when an instinct I never knew I had finally kicked in. They dragged my parents inside and slammed the heavy oak door shut, plunging the foyer into a dim, ominous light. I didn't think. I didn't scream. I just turned and ran, not for a phone, not for a window, but for the basement. It was a dark, unfinished space that always gave me the creeps. But tonight it was my only hope. I slipped down the basement stairs, my hand shaking so badly I could barely grip the railing. The door at the top had a simple bolt lock. I slid it home, praying the sound wasn't loud enough to hear. I plunged into the cold, musty darkness and scrambled behind an old furnace, curling myself into the tightest ball I could manage. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. And then, I heard the sounds from upstairs begin. I expected them to be looking for valuables. That's what robbers do, right? They take things. But that's not what these men did. The first sound was the shattering of glass, not a window, but something smaller like the crystal vase on our mantelpiece. Then came another crash. And another. It was the sound of our china cabinet being emptied onto the floor. I could hear the musical destruction of plates and bowls my mom had collected for 20 years. It was a cold, senseless rage. I heard a heavy, rhythmic thudding from the living room, the sound of them kicking in our TV screen. Then a wrenching, tearing sound. Fabric. Were they slashing the sofas? Ripping curtains from the walls? I sat there in the dark, trembling, and listened as my home was murdered. Every crash, every smash, was a fresh wave of terror. I heard them go into the kitchen. The methodical destruction of every dish. The clang of pots and pans thrown against the walls. They weren't stealing. They were erasing us. It wasn't about greed. It was about hate. I could hear their muffled voices, but I couldn't make out words. Just low, guttural sounds, punctuated by the noise. Then I heard them coming up the stairs. My blood turned to ice. They were going to check the bedrooms. They were going to find the basement door. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to will myself invisible. I heard my bedroom door get kicked open. The sound was so personal, so invasive. I heard things being thrown. My desk lamp crashing against the wall. My bookshelf toppling over. They were in my space, tainting everything I owned with their malice. After an eternity, I heard them go back downstairs. A terrifying moment of silence fell. I held my breath, listening for the creak of the basement door. It never came. Instead, I heard the front door open and slam shut one last time. Then, the sound of an engine starting and fading away. Silence. A profound, ringing silence that was somehow worse than the noise. I stayed hidden for what felt like hours, too scared to move. Was it a trick? Finally, a new sound broke the silence. A soft, pained groan from upstairs. My dad. I uncurled my stiff body and crept up the stairs. The sight that greeted me will haunt me forever. It was our home. But it was a war zone. Everything was broken. Family photos were stomped on, the glass crunching under my feet. Furniture was slashed and overturned. And in the middle of it all were my parents, stirring, bruised and beaten, but alive. The police came. They took statements and photos. But there was little to go on. No one saw the car. No motive. Nothing of real value was even taken. They'd left laptops and cash right on the counter. They hadn't come to rob us. They had come to break us. The most chilling detail came later. As we sorted through the wreckage, we found muddy footprints all through the house. They had gone into every single room, even the guest bathroom. They had walked through the carnage they created, leaving their mark, a final, silent declaration that no part of our sanctuary had been left untouched. We moved out a month later. We couldn't stay. The house was no longer a home. It was a tomb. And no matter where I go, no matter how many locks are on the door, I'm still that 17-year-old boy, hiding in the dark, listening to the sounds of my world being torn apart. The violation of a home is a unique kind of horror. But sometimes the terror doesn't need to smash down the door. Sometimes all it takes is a single, chilling sign that someone is right outside, watching, waiting, and letting you know you're not alone in the worst way possible. Story to my sister, Chloe. And I grew up in a house that was defined by its isolation. It was an old farmhouse, nestled deep in the countryside, a good 20-minute drive from the nearest town. Our closest neighbor was over a mile away. For us, this solitude wasn't scary. It was just our world. It was quiet, peaceful, and ours. We were used to the sounds of wind and animals, not people. I was 16 and Chloe was 14. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon in the middle of summer. Our parents were out for the day, leaving us to ourselves. We were blasting music and getting ready to go down to the creek, just being typical teenagers. We were in the main bathroom on the ground floor at the back of the house. I was fighting with my tangled hair in the mirror, and Chloe was trying to pick a t-shirt. The bathroom window was made of old, frosted glass. You could only see distorted shapes and colors through it, which was fine for privacy. It was a small, high window about 5.5 feet off the ground from the outside. As I was trying to get a knot out of my hair, a shadow passed by the window. It was just a quick flicker of darkness against the bright, milky glass. "Did you see that?" Chloe asked, pausing. "Probably just a bird," I said, not really paying attention. It made sense. But a few seconds later, the shadow was back. And this time, it stopped. A solid, dark shape, right outside our window. The music suddenly felt way too loud. We both just stared at it, frozen. It was too big for a bird. And too still to be a swaying branch. My heart started to beat a little faster. An animal, maybe? Then, with a sudden, wet slapping sound that made us both jump, a hand pressed flat against the glass. It wasn't a shadow anymore. It was a hand. A human hand. We could see the pale shape of the palm and the dark lines of the fingers spread wide. It was a man's hand, large and stark against the glass. It just stayed there, pressing. Panic, cold and sharp, shot through me. Someone was outside, standing on something to reach that high, deliberately looking into our bathroom. Our peaceful isolation wasn't a comfort anymore. It was a trap. Chloe let out a small, terrified gasp. I grabbed her arm. "The door," I whispered. We backed away from the window, our eyes still glued to that hand. And I quietly locked the heavy bathroom door. My pop music was still playing from my phone, sounding grotesque and totally surreal. I fumbled to turn it off. Then I dialed 911. As the phone rang, a loud bang rattled the bathroom door. He was trying to get in. "911, what is your emergency?" a calm voice said. "Someone is trying to break into our house?" I whispered, my voice trembling so hard I could barely form the words. The door shuddered again, harder this time. It sounded like he was throwing his shoulder against it. "Okay, ma'am. Where are you?" the operator asked. I choked out our address, explaining that we were locked in the bathroom. Every bang on the door made me flinch. We could hear him now, a low, frustrated grunting sound. "Just stay on the line with me. Officers are on their way," she said, her voice a lifeline. "Do you know who it is?" "No," I managed to say. "We just saw his hand." The banging got more frantic, more violent. The door frame started to splinter. Chloe was crying silently, her hands pressed against her mouth. I pulled her into the far corner, trying to shield her with my body. Then came a sound that will be in my nightmares forever. The sharp, explosive crack of wood giving way. The lock had broken. The door swung violently inward, slamming against the wall. A man stood in the doorway. He was tall and thin, wearing a dirty flannel shirt, his face gaunt and his eyes wide and manic. He looked at us, huddled in the corner. He didn't say a word. He just stared. We were trapped. I held my sister tighter, preparing for whatever was next. The 911 operator's voice just a frantic buzz in my ear. But as he took a step into the room, we heard it. The unmistakable wail of a police siren, getting closer, fast. His head snapped toward the sound. The manic look in his eyes was replaced by pure animal panic. Without a second glance at us, he turned and ran. We heard his heavy footsteps pounding through the house, the back door being thrown open. And then, silence except for the sirens. We didn't move until we heard the police calling out our names. We came out of the bathroom, shaking, into the arms of a female officer. They searched the property. But he was gone, vanished back into the woods. Later, the police found a stack of old firewood piled up neatly right beneath the bathroom window, a makeshift ladder. There were footprints circling the entire house, stopping at every single window. As if he had been peering in, watching us, waiting. That thought was almost as terrifying as the break-in. How long had he been out there? How many times had we been in our home, feeling safe? While he was just outside, watching our lives from the trees. We never found out who he was. He was never caught. But he took something from us that day we can never get back. He took our peace. He took our solitude and twisted it into a weapon. Now, years later, living in a crowded city, I still never feel truly safe. I check windows. I jump at shadows. Because I know that sometimes, The most terrifying monsters are the ones who leave a handprint on your window, a chilling, silent announcement that they're outside. And they want to come in. The feeling of being safe at home is built on trust. Trust that your locks will hold, that your walls will protect you. As these stories show, that trust can be shattered in a moment. What would you have done? Have you ever had an experience that made you question your own safety? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. And your stories are what make this community. If these stories gave you a chill, please like this video and subscribe for more true scary stories every week. Your support lets us keep bringing these unsettling tales out of the shadows. Stay safe, and always check your locks.